The Untouchables. In the late 1950s, after the Kefauver Committee's investigation into organized crime ended, the television airwaves were flooded with gangster epics, but none was as successful as The Untouchables. A weekly feature that fictionalized the sensational doings of federal prohibition agent Eliot Ness. While there's certainly no doubt that Ness and his men were heroic in their battle against the Capone mob, the fact is that Al Capone probably never knew Eliot Ness's name, since Ness and his group of so-called untouchables, government agents, were little more than a mere nuisance to Capone organization than anything else. Eliot Ness died in 1957, his exploits against Capone almost unknown and forgotten. However, a few days before his death, Ness's biography The Untouchables was published. The book, complete with occasional embellishments, sold well, and Hollywood, specifically Desilu Productions, which was owned by Desi Arnaz and Lucy Ball, decided that Ness's exploits, properly rewritten, would make a fine television show. They were right. In its first season, The Untouchables, starring the stoic Robert Stack, was a smash hit. While the program was popular with the general public, it palled with the Mafia, which still operated, more or less, as an unknown entity. What's more, the mob in 1960 was still ruled over by men who had known Capone and Nitti, who were often the focus of the show, and were fond of them. The National Mafia Commission figured, correctly, that by allowing the show to air, that it would set a precedent. They reasoned, if the outfit were allowed to be discussed openly on television, what was next? So the council had a meet about it, wrote Lucky Luciano, and one of the guys in Prophesiz's outfit named Joe Colombo come up with the idea of forming a legitimate association of Americans with Italian backgrounds to start a campaign against using just Italian names for them gangsters in the TV shows and movies. The whole idea was to try and get the Untouchables off the fucking air. The syndicate backed Colombo's idea and put money into something called the Federation of Italian-American Democratic Organizations, headed by U.S. Congressman Alfred Santangelo, who, according to Luciano, knew from the start that the entire organization was underwritten by the mob. The Federation launched a boycott against the program's sponsor, Liggett and Myers Tobacco Company, who eventually withdrew their support from the show. But the boycott that was supposed to take the show off the air had just the opposite effect. When word of the Mafia-backed band made the press, the show's rating went through the roof and Chesterfield cigarettes were back as the program's sponsor. Exasperated, the Chicago mob's elders put Johnny Rosselli, their West Coast representative, on the case. Rosselli recruited mobster Jimmy the Weasel Frasciano to fix the problem. Frasciano's answer was to shoot Desi Arnaz, the show's primary producer. Millions of people all over the world see this show every fucking week, Rosselli told Frasciano. It's even popular in Italy. And what they see is a bunch of Italian lunatics running around with machine guns, talking out of the corner of their mouths, slopping spaghetti like a bunch of fucking pigs. They make Capone and Nitti look like bloodthirsty maniacs. The top guys have voted a hit. We're going to clip Desi Arnaz, the producer of the show. Eventually, cooler heads prevailed and it was decided that killing Arnaz, who was one of the world's most popular entertainment personalities, would only cause more problems than it would solve, but, still, the bosses wanted the show taken off the air. Since Arnaz was leasing space to Frank Sinatra's production company at Desilu Studios, where Arnaz was also filming The Untouchables, Chicago's boss Tony Accardo told his underboss Sam Giancana to contact Frank Sinatra and have him talk with Arnaz about taking the program off the air. Sinatra may have taken the request further than Accardo intended it to go. In late April of 1961, Sinatra, actress Dorothy Provini and composer Jimmy Van Heusen drove to the Indian Wells Country Club outside of Los Angeles and waited in the restaurant, where Arnaz ended most evenings at the bar. Almost on schedule, Arnaz strolled into the club, dwarfed by his bodyguards. Spotting Sinatra, Arnaz good-naturedly yelled across the room, "Hiya Dago," and then walked over to Sinatra's table. Sinatra was all business and got right to the point. He told Arnaz that his friends didn't like the Untouchable program and that it made all Italians look like killers. Arnaz, slurred with whiskey, replied, "What do you want me to do, Frank? Make them all Jews?" Except in his thick Cuban accent it came out Jews. "You want them all to be Jews, Frankie?" "Huh? Let me tell you something. I remember you when Jew couldn't get a job, Frankie, couldn't get a job. So why don't you forget all this bullshit and just have your drinks and enjoy yourself? Stop getting your nose in where it doesn't belong, you and your so-called friends," and then walked away leaving a castrated Sinatra to say, "I couldn't hit him, we've been friends for too long." At around 4 a.m. Sinatra's group left the bar and went to Van Heusen's house in Palm Desert, with Sinatra still fuming over the humiliation he had taken from Arnaz. Once inside Van Heusen's house, Sinatra exploded and attacked an original painting by Norman Rockwell, carving it up with a kitchen knife. If you try to fix that or put it back, he told Van Heusen, I will come and blow the fucking house up. The Untouchables not only stayed on the air,